All right. Well, welcome to another episode of a Well Done Professional Midlife Crisis podcast. Today, I am super excited. I have Bert Miller, who is the president and CEO of Management Recruiters, with me today. So, welcome, Bert.
Thank you, Sharon. It's great to be here. When I'm with you, I'm with one of the top recruiters. Literally, I'd make an argument in the world, and obviously now a distinguished author, and of course a longtime friend. So I'm happy to be here.
Yes, we have been friends for a really long time, which is great. That's why I'm so excited to interview you and have you share what I've been lucky enough to understand, and that's all your pearls of wisdom. So let's dive in. So, not all that long ago, 8 months ago, you decided to purchase Management Recruiters. You are independent franchisee, and you decided to purchase Management Recruiters. So, what made you decide to take Protus and make it even bigger and actually purchase Management Recruiters International?
Yeah, that's a great question based on the fact that where I am in my both my business life cycle and my biological life cycle. But what we did is I really decided to purchase MRI separately. It has no attachment to Protus, but it's an opportunity really, Sharon, to ensure the longer term health of the MRI brand. It's also a chance to really transform the company. At the same time, it's coinciding with an industry transformation as well. So it's a very sleepy brand that needed some energy and passion. I don't know if you've heard that before. That's in your
Right.
book, by the way. Yeah, yeah. So I thought that why not? I needed a challenge.
So you've been in the role 8 months now. You have a lot of people talking to you on a daily basis about what they're looking for. What would you say in having been a franchisor and now really owning and leading the franchise organization? What has been your greatest learning?
Yeah, you know what's really been cool, and I got to tell you, the network's even more resilient and a family than what I already thought it was. Um, the abundance mentality that we've all had for years is really coming to the surface. The community, I think, at MRI is very unique, and the way it operates. And man, what a spot for somebody early that has a firm. When I think of MRI, and when I look at their businesses and and that has legacy fundamentals and the necessary vision looking forward, I really think MRI is a really cool place to be.
So, in thinking about, I want to just ask a follow up question on that. So, there's lots of other organizations very similar to MRI, other franchise organizations. What do you think sets MRI apart from the other franchise organizations that are out there?
Without question, it's the community. I mean, it is a community atmosphere just amongst the network. Now, there's more to it that has to come relative to tools, and I think right now, if you look at the legacy MRI, we're keeping the great foundation of the legacy MRI, Sharon, but we're also bringing to the table where we believe the industry is headed. And so when I think of the industry and the passion and the team that we're building, along with the owners that have been incredibly supportive, it makes all the sense in the world that the product development that we're going to have, the tools we're going to deliver, that too will start to separate MRI apart from others.
So, this podcast is all about leadership and about really sort of figuring out how to, like you said, bleed passion and energy into your leadership. Now, you followed a plethora of leaders within our organization. So, how would you define your leadership style for those that are either in the industry or even those that are outside the industry and wanting to learn more about leadership and building teams? Give me thoughts around your journey. What do you anticipate maybe are some of the challenges that you're going to encounter? And even thoughtful about how are you designing your own team?
Yeah. I'll try to unpack that. First of all, it's an interesting question, first and foremost. Um, we're now a privately held organization, which now gives me at least day-to-day advantage over many of the past leaders that have sat in this chair, especially from a decision-making process. Um, but I think the biggest thing, Sharon, me being a fellow owner allows me some room with the network to make decisions. And, all the decisions I'm making for the network certainly affects my own firms and that I currently have. And then your first question was really about the culture. I guess my style is I really believe we got to get things done. I believe in execution. I think if somebody were to describe me, is that they would say I'm caring, transparent and direct, but I am very caring, and I like to go at a pace that probably is uncomfortable for a few.
So it's interesting. One of the things that I've been told as a leader is that it's unrealistic to expect people to manage or to work at my pace, which, I do think that that's a challenge we have when we're type A and we're busy and we're working all the time. So knowing what the culture was, especially at the home office level or even what was pushed out to the franchisors, how do you anticipate culture to change? And is there fear associated with that? And then what are expectations? If you had to sort of paint a picture of what culture is going to look like moving forward, what would be that sort of broad, overarching description of what the culture will be?
Yeah, that's an awesome question, Sharon. When you think of the turnover of leadership over the last, there was 12 leaders at one point, I want to say over 14, 15 years. And more importantly, there was a lack of partnership with our owners and lack of partnership with our network. And from that, you had that whole thing was tearing the whole thing apart, right? I mean, you have a network of folks that are tied, you have people tied to a network, and you had the leadership within this network that was not leading, but holding people to a contract. And so the cool thing is about this company, it's a wonderful company that's forged many frontiers as a leader in our industry. And if you think about MRI, Sharon, I mean, we're a 55-year-old company, or now I'm saying a 55-year-old startup that's trained over 25,000 recruiters and made over 818,000 placements. And right now, if you go back over 55 years, MRI's average a placement every 19.1 minutes. So that there's a couple pieces there. And then the last thing would be, we've been able to take a look at our organization. We've added some great talent. Some of our rosters obviously left along the way over the last few months. But the way the company was shaped was legacy in nature versus where our industry is headed. And therefore, there's just different skills that are needed.
So can you define, so you talked about where the industry is headed. Give me a lens of what that looks like from your perspective, even just business in general. Obviously search is what we all do, but business in general, where do you think it's headed?
Well, I think if you take a look, just starting at the very fundamental level, if you look the way our industry has been set up over the years, we have moved quickly, and we're moving rapidly away from what we call a full cycle recruiter, or what you and I would say 360 model, right? But a full cycle recruiter where an individual actually does the business development and recruitment, and that's quickly going away and becoming more at the pace where you have to be able to scale. You also have some things that are happening, Sharon, about the world of work. The world of work is dramatically changing. And what I mean by that is we have 160 million people in the US working, at least as of a couple of weeks ago. And 65% of those folks are in the perm business, and 35% are in the interim business. And you start to see the convergence between direct or perm, as what we know as perm, converging from a life cycle timeline. You have those roles lasting 3.5 years. You have contract roles that are now tapping on 3 years of contracts. And so it's no longer, it's no longer perm or contract. We have to be talent advisors. We have to give our clients access to talent versus just marketing what we used to say is the MPC or the impact player, or talent to market. We have to give people access to that talent. And there's different ways that we're gonna have to go about doing that. Obviously the phone is our number one weapon, but there's also gonna be other methodologies of how we promote and what I would like to say, create an inbound strategy by becoming well known within your vertical.
So you recently moved the home office from Philadelphia to Fort Lauderdale. Was that because you don't like snow, or was that part of the strategy?
That's part of the strategy, and I don't like snow, and I do like great weather. Obviously, my home is in South Florida, so I want to be here in South Florida. And then when I think about the synergies, you heard the announcement this morning. I think you've heard what we're doing in terms of what we just hired a chief vision officer, Joe Mullings, that we now have a couple different studios that we'll have access to through that partnership. And so strategically, it makes a lot of sense to where we're heading, where we're taking the company relative to the available facilities and that we have at our fingertips.
So, obviously, one of the reasons why I think you're the perfect person for this role is you have a great lens on the reality of change. Um, we're experiencing tremendous change right now with the coronavirus, something that is unprecedented. So, how do you anticipate, as we come out of this, what do you anticipate some of the changes will be to the business landscape?
Yeah, first I'd want to say, look, this is without question, Sharon. It's a tragedy on many levels. Um, Not, obviously the illness first and foremost, and people's safety and health, and then you go beyond that, and just the impact to the workforce in terms of their incomes, their jobs, the uncertainty about what is happening and where this thing might end and where it might go as we come out the other side, and really what the new normal is going to be. Um, I, as I see that, in terms of as I feel what's happening, Sharon, there is a lot of concern. But what I would really say is that we had a lot of pent up demand, of course, before we now been basically sent home to work from our home offices in many respects. But I think what's going to happen is going to be like a tsunami. I really do. I think the water has receded, and some people are curious and they walk out into the water, walk out to where the water was, wondering what's going on. And I think the people the smart ones are going to high ground, doing and making the changes they need to make, because the water is going to come back with a flurry. And I think that's what's going to happen to our industry.
Okay. So obviously, I always like the get out of jail free card do over. So if you could have one do over as president of MRI, what would you take as your do over?
Yeah, specific to MRI or just a one do over and
It could be one do over in general, too.
yeah. I think with my earlier years, Sharon, I would have liked to become more flexible and expand my mind to take on more challenges, to do things of this magnitude and the responsibilities like this that I'm taking on. I think in the back of my mind, I would step out. I mean, I would do the things that I really have been thinking about. And so for those of your listeners that are listening out there, if you take one thing from this talk today, I mean, assess your own situation, especially those that care, want to impact others, and go forth. I mean, and your book's a great testament to that, I think.
Thanks. Nice plug for the book. Thank you. I
Oh, of
appreciate
course,
that.
man. Anytime I can.
So I know you have two fabulous kids in Sky and Lance, and you're you're a franchise owner. You're president of MRI. How in the world are you maintaining balance? I mean, life is about enjoying life as well. So how are you trying to maintain balance with everything you have going on?
Yeah, well, I don't have a ton of hobbies. So, I mean, I don't play golf hardly at all. I don't, I do live in Miami, but I don't have a boat. So I enjoy this. And so, this is not a shameless plug for your book again, but when I read your book, I am literally doing what I was put on this planet to do. I really believe that. It's not work life for me. It's just life. My children are in the industry as well. I mean, they work at Protus. And so we have a ton of common topics when we get together as a family. And it's an unrelenting family to each other, but we have a great time. And so that's been amazing to be able to grow up in this business as a franchiser with my children working in it, and then today Pros Global being part of the network that we're a part of and growing, and my kids being part of that whole thing with me.
Hmm. So we have a lot of young people that watch the podcast. So for those that are either sitting at home because their college is now online or they're young in their career, what kind of advice would you give them knowing where it is today and to be optimistic and thoughtful going into the future?
Yeah, I think for anything you want in life, and then maybe this is an attribute or a characteristic share, but I think people have to be relentless and courageous. I mean, for those that are willing to go after what they want with an unrelentless, or with a relentless manner, I should say, and be brave doing it, uh, and not be afraid to find out what their work-life balance is, but really try to find the life that they really want. There's going to be risk toward that road less traveled, without question, versus the easy path. And I think when you think about people, and if you read about the 85, 15 rule and 5, or 85, 10, and 5 rule, there's the very, very few that will take that road less traveled and find out what their true, go after their true dream. It's so easy for us to grab a job or career or whatever the case may be and take the easy path versus finding our mission. So for those who
You
can
know,
find their
I
mission, man, go for it.
it's so funny that you bring up courage. For years, I struggled with some people that I had hired, and I never could figure out what was that common theme that made certain people do really well and certain people not. And a lot of it was not hiring to that value, which is incredibly, incredibly important to me. So, and I do think that in times like this, courage is it's a necessity because how do you take on trying to do what you can and be thoughtful on safety and continue business and all of that without the courage to get up every morning and get back in the fight, right?
Well, I mean, this is what you sign up for, right? I mean, you sign up for what you do every single day, Sharon, and then you get this curveball that we have right now. And not only is it a curveball, but it's one that deals. It has a lot of health consequences to it. It's locking down our cities and our country, and really it has an impact across the world. And so now, from a leadership perspective, you've got to find new avenues. You have to communicate. You cannot communicate enough. I mean, and you have to provide. Here, let's be real. People are scared. I mean, that's that. I mean, we can soft shoe around that. We can do whatever you want, and we can be calm on the outside, but we're all wanting to survive and protect our businesses and help our. In my case, first thing I'm doing is I'm thinking about our network and our owners. And if you just do the math from my perspective. If I take Crotus, their husband, wives, daughters, kids, in some cases cousins and parents, and I take ACE, and then I add in the MRI corporate folks, and then I take the network of owners and their husbands and wives and partners, their children and grandchildren, and I haven't even talked about clients or the talent that we impact every day too. Um, it's massively important. And so it's almost double duty right now. And I think when you want to be a leader and you take things like this on, you just have to step to the plate, and you do have to be courageous. You're right.
So I don't want to give away any trade secrets, obviously, but I'm sure you have some dreams for MRI in the next 3 to 5 years. So how do you see the organization as a whole continuing to evolve?
Yeah, as a network, we're going to provide to our network all the tools and services that are going to be the best in the industry. That's number one. But I guess if you want to sum it up in just a few words, we'll be the preeminent talent access network in the world. We really will. I mean, there's no question about that.
Well, I'm excited to watch and learn and listen as we go forward, and I really appreciate your time. Is there anything else, Bert, that you can share for any of our listeners, young tenured. It can be about what's happening in our world right now or even in the future. Is there any final parting words for our listeners?
Yeah, I know we don't want to focus on what's happening right now. We're not, and this was a great conversation. Thank you very much. It's a nice, distraction from what I've been dealing with for the last week and a half. But I do think it's important to provide some form of tactical, maybe leadership, if you will, to folks that are out there that are making some decisions. The first thing is be real. I mean, that's the conversation I just had with you a second ago. You got to own how you feel. More importantly, and this goes across all industries, Sharon, we in say there's not just not our industry when we're selling, but it goes across other industries. Have empathy when you're approaching folks to buy your products. Certainly, your product has value. You've been selling them, but a lot of people, as I mentioned earlier, are worried and scared, and so they need you to be there to help provide really a solution if you have one, or just to listen in other cases. The last one would be just at this moment in time, really laser in to what you're really focused on for your business. And we have what we are focused on, but whatever your key objectives are, make them two or three. And if it's some, you have to unplug one or two because of the nature of the circumstances, unplug it. And so you can really focus. And then lastly, really protect your business. If you have vendors, folks that you're talking to, work with them in advance so that there's no surprises, and work with them as partners to really get out of this thing. So I think that's important right now.
It's great advice. And, I do think we're all trying to course correct to make sure that what we're doing is of value and that we are showing empathy. And I agree with that a lot of what we're doing today is just listening and trying to help not only our own business, but everybody else's business to survive through this so that we come out the other side, everybody collectively stronger. So I so appreciate your time. I can only imagine that you are crazy busy with phone calls and people asking for help. So I just want to again say I'm.
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
I would not have, sorry, there's a little bit of a time gap. I would, there's nobody I would have done this for today but you. How's that?
Well, we have been friends a long time. We grew up in this business together, which has been fun. So thank you. We're very proud of you and what you're doing, and if there's anything obviously we can do to help you, also reach out to us as well. Thanks again, Bert, for your time.
Thanks, Sharon. Talk soon. Bye-bye.